Okay, good evening, everyone. We'll call the meeting of the Environmental Commission to order. Dominique, would you mind doing roll call, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Commissioner Randazzo,
Present.
Commissioner Murphy,
Here.
Commissioner Del Val,
Present.
Commissioner Mole,
Present.
and Commissioner Rayak.
Present.
You do have a quorum.
Thank you. All right.
And for the record, Commissioner 2 is on excused absence for her leave.
Thank you. All right, let's begin with public comment. If there's anybody joining us today that would like to address the commission on an item that's not on the agenda, you can do so now.
Okay, members of the public on Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature or dial *9 if you're calling in from a phone. Andy Offenbacher, you now have the floor to make your public comment.
Thank you very much. I'll be very brief. I'm a homeowner in Seaside Highlands. I guess you can hear me, right?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. This will be very brief. Probably you're aware that Governor Newsom signed a law recently that will eventually ban gas-powered lawn equipment. I'm supporting that. There's a ban in effect in Monterey and in Pacific Grove now. Maybe you're aware of that. It would be nice if Seaside could also kind of be a bit ahead of the curve and not wait until 2024 for the ban to come into effect, and maybe also ban this equipment in Seaside. And I don't know if you talked about this before or if anyone's raised this issue before, but because of the noise issue, because of the pollution issue, they're horribly polluting compared to, let's say, the cars' engines. They're hundreds of times more polluting. I just would support that, and I imagine many people in the community would also be supportive of that. So I guess there's no way to get your feedback now because this is just a one-way thing, but I just wanted to throw that out there, and if there's anything you can do to make this happen sooner than 2024, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. We do appreciate your comment.
Yep.
Are there any other members of the public wishing to address the commission?
Chair, no other members of the public on Zoom have indicated they wish to make public comment.
Okay. Is there anything not on the agenda that anyone on the commission would like to add or amend?
I would just note that I don't see a review of minutes from the past meeting, so assuming that will be covered in the next meeting.
Yeah, let's add that to the next meeting and we'll review the minutes for the October meeting and the November meeting in December. I'd also like to suggest we switch item C under business items to A. Tanya is here to do a guest presentation and just want to be considerate of her time if she needs to leave early. So I will move that we approve the agenda with that small change and with the change noted by Laura to approve the minutes in December for the last 2 months. Is there a second?
Yeah, I second both of those.
Okay. All right. Dominique, do you want me to do a vote on that, or do you want to?
Either way, a roll call vote would be necessary, though.
Okay, can I ask you to do it, please? It's
sure.
Much easier for me. Thank you. So the motion is to just amend the agenda to move item C to item A, and then to review the minutes from November and October in December. That's what we're voting on.
All right. Commissioner DeVal,
Aye.
Commissioner Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Randazzo,
Aye.
Commissioner Mollet,
Aye.
and Commissioner Reyes.
Aye.
Your motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. Let's jump into the business items then. And Tanya, it looks like you've already been promoted to a panelist, so I think you may have sharing abilities if there's a presentation that you'd like to share, and I will turn the floor over to you. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Tanya Rust, and I'm the Community Program Manager with the Blue Zones Project, Monterey County. So I'm here to share a little bit about our work today and also see if there's an opportunity for some input or brainstorming about possible opportunities for collaboration at the end. So I do have a short deck. Let me see if the Zoom magic is going to work. Yes. Are you okay? There that goes. We'll go into here. Okay. Are you able to see the screen? I see a thumbs up.
Yes.
All right. Great. Perfect. So not sure how many of you are familiar about the Blue Zones Project, but I was going to just give a brief overview here and share a bit more. So Blue Zones Project is a national initiative. It has been brought here locally by our sponsors, Salinas Valley Memorial Healthcare System, Taylor Farms, and Montage Health, who are investing in long-term community health and well-being. So their commitment allows all of our work in community to be 100% free and accessible for whomever wants to engage in the work. So kind of high level, what is Blue Zones Project all about? So it's a comprehensive approach to well-being that is really focused in driving measurable improvements in kind of key specific metrics areas. It's really important for us to kind of understand the short-term and long-term impact of the work that we're doing. Generally speaking, we're an initiative that tries to make healthy choices easier and more accessible. So it all began through the work of National Geographic explorer Dan Buettner, who was fascinated with traveling all around the world, trying to understand communities that not only live the longest, but most wonderful lives. So him and his team traveled all over the planet and discovered the 5 original blue zones, which are these longevity hotspots where folks were living 100 years or longer. And not only living long, but they're living these vital, wonderful, connected lives. So you can see Loma Linda, California, which is always an eyebrow raiser, the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, Sardinia, Italy, Icaria, Greece, and Okinawa, Japan. So the next natural question came, kind of identifying these 5 original blue zones is, well, are there common characteristics that exist across all of them, regardless of geography? And the answer here is yes. So this is that circular graphic that you see encapsulates those 9 key characteristics, which we have come to call the Power 9. And they're kind of arranged in 4 general topic areas: moving naturally, having the right outlook, eating wisely, and connecting with community. So kind of within that, you can see purpose plays a big part, downshifting or actively finding practices to de-stress, eating, stopping eating when you're about 80% full, eating a primarily plant-based diet, enjoying wine or friends at 5 as another methodology to de-stress, finding your community, your chosen family, putting your loved ones first, and cultivating a sense of belonging. These are the kind of the secret sauce of longevity that was discovered from the 5 original blue zones. So what our project does is it essentially attempts to reverse engineer those characteristics into communities across the United States. So Blue Zones Project originally came to Monterey County with a focus in Salinas, but it had always been part of the broader vision to expand across the county. Sorry, my cat is talking, so you might hear him in the background. So, why Monterey County? I think for those of us that have lived here for some time, this slide profiles a couple of the key statistics here. Half of the folks in Monterey County report that they're struggling with a sense of hope and a deeper purpose that informs their days. The one down on the right is always a concerning one for me, in the fact that we're literally growing a substantial amount of leafy greens and food, literally for the world. However, our populations report some of the deepest food insecurity across the state. So, there's a lot of compelling reasons why this work is important in this county. So as I said, the work started in Salinas in 2018, and we're currently expanding across the county as a whole, and then with a specific focus in the peninsula cities of Marina, Monterey, and Seaside. And then at the end of this year and into 2022, there will be a kind of the second wave of expansion into Gonzales and King City. So we'll be working across all of these different communities for the coming years ahead. I think one of the interesting, I mentioned, measuring impact and understanding metrics and community well-being. The graphic in the corner, the left corner, is a very simplified way, but essentially this is how we seek to define community well-being across these 5 areas. So understanding, some of the typical metrics for health and well-being, like, BMI, cholesterol levels, diabetes rates, et cetera, encapsulated in physical, but understanding, purpose and people's motivation and involvement in community, understanding social connectedness, financial stability, and again, that sense of community. So it's really looking at well-being from a holistic perspective. I think we all know it's getting harder and harder to lead a healthy lifestyle. We're looking at some of the statistics around being obesity or being overweight. Those numbers are growing. We're constantly bombarded with advertisements, social media, targeted ads around trying to, encourage unhealthy behaviors. And certainly in these pandemic times, the impact on mental health, loneliness, and social isolation are significant factors that are impacting people's health and well-being. There is good news against all of that backdrop, in the sense that about 80% of our health, well-being, and longevity actually has to do with our lifestyle and environment. And really only about 20% has to do with our genetics. So if we start to think about ways that we can change our lifestyle and environment, that can only improve our health and well-being. So the way we work is across something that we call the life radius. So this is essentially the 5 to 10 mile radius within which an individual would live, work, pray, play, all of the things. And so we seek to impact 3 specific areas within that, the people, the places, and policies. So that's kind of the 3 legs of the stool that Blue Zones Project works within. So for people, it's all about community engagement and supporting and empowering individuals to make small kind of incremental changes that roll up to a greater sense of health individually, as well as community well-being. So we do things like support walking and potluck moai. So a moai is a word that we borrow from our community, the original community in Okinawa, Japan. A moai is essentially a group of individuals that gather around a shared sense of purpose. So we do walking moai, so getting people together to just go walking and tighten that social network. We do potluck moais where people can experiment with plant-based foods because it's always more fun to do it together. We host purpose workshops, which is about an hour and a half free workshop where people kind of literally, they'll come in not really knowing, their bigger why in the world, and we'll end the workshop having written kind of a personal manifesto that they can carry forward and really get involved. We have a deeper offering with the Purpose Moai. So that's a 10-week deep dive into purpose. We do a lot of community volunteering events and then just other fun community events to get people out, engaged, meeting new folks, and contributing. We also work across places. So this is where we bring, our sets of evidence-based practices to schools, work sites, restaurants, grocery stores, and civic and faith-based organizations. So we essentially will engage with leadership and wellness committees at each one of these locations to kind of identify what are practices that they're already doing and what are practices that they'd like to do to support their students or employees in healthier practices. So we've got a whole lot of different places that we're starting to work with in the Peninsula cities, and it's been pretty exciting. We had a great meeting earlier today with Ione Olson School in Marina, and they're just so excited about what's possible for their students and staff there. And then the third piece is policy. So we work in 3 policy areas: the built environment, so essentially working to make our cities more livable, bikeable, walkable, increase access to public transit, thoughtful urban design, these sorts of things. We work in tobacco policy, so partnering with cities to update different ordinances, whatever it may be, or smoke-free multi-unit housing. There's all sorts of opportunity. Certainly, we're in California, we're quite advanced as it relates to tobacco policy, but there's always room for improvement. And the third piece in policy is food. We've had the opportunity to launch a food policy council for Monterey County. And there's lots of other ways that we're engaging with localized food policy as well. So just some ideas here as kind of jumping off points. That's kind of how I like to work, is just kind of throw ideas out and then engage in dialogue. So, I'm just thinking about some of the work that has already started with the city of Seaside. We were grateful that the council passed a resolution of support, and certainly the mayor is enthusiastic about bringing Blue Zones project to the city and to the greater community. But just thinking about the scope that I understand that you all are thinking about, I kind of pulled out a few pieces here. Certainly in the under policy work, thinking about the built environment and parks, green spaces, trail connectivity, the 4-tag trail, public transit, and any sort of downtown revitalization efforts. And the food environment, I know there used to be a farmer's market within the city of Seaside, and I've been quite curious to learn about, where that is, what went wrong. I don't know if that's the word. What lessons could be learned from that? And if there is an interest, a hunger, sorry, pun, if it's to bring it back and how that could be supported. Thinking about community gardens as another, methodology for food resiliency and supporting, food sovereignty within community. And then, of course, there's the Food Policy Council, which I mentioned already. And then engagement. When I had the chance to talk with Lacey I know there's some thinking going into the community cleanup days. You know, FOSPA is an amazing organization that is already, you know, hosting a bunch of cleanup days on the weekends. But where there's opportunity to align with those and support those, you know, we've had some great turnouts at cleanup events that we've hosted in collaboration with other groups across the region. So just wanting to kind of open up that for ideas as well. If you are interested in learning more and getting on our mailing list and all that good stuff, you know, you can snap a little picture of this QR code here and take the personal pledge. I imagine all of you are already doing many of the things on here, but it's a way for you to just keep in touch with us as the work continues. And then there's some other ways right off the bat that you can get involved with us. Tomorrow, we're launching a couple of MOIs. In fact, one up into, you know, that intersection with General Jim Moore and Co. and Eucalyptus. And so we have a walking group starting tomorrow morning at 7:45. If anyone wants to get up early and put on their walking shoes. There's another one we're launching at the Monterey Rec Trail. We've got a purpose workshop that's coming up virtual on the 16th. The 17th is National Take a Hike Day. So we've got a whole bunch of hikes happening all across the county, but one in your local area at Seaside State Beach. And then we're doing a beach cleanup on the 20th and many, many more opportunities kind of in the works in the coming months. So I can share this link to the Eventbrite if you're interested in learning about any more of those. So yeah, it's all about trying to find ways to support community and living longer, better. And really the key word is together. We're not here to reinvent wheels or replace or replicate. We really value spending time with groups like yours to learn about what initiatives are in play and how we can better support that with the end goal of really seeing the community thrive. So with that, I think that was the last slide. I'm going to stop sharing and would love if there's any questions or immediate thoughts or ideas. I'm here. So, and sorry, a little distracted by the cat because he's been jumping on the table and now I don't know what he's doing over there.
We're cat and animal people here. So yes, Kristen, go ahead. I see your hand.
Yes, and certainly sympathy with the cat. I had one all up in my camera earlier. I was just wondering if we could connect Tanya here with some of the safe routes to school
Yes.
that we were working on previously. I know that was involving changes to the city to encourage walking and biking to school. Certainly, if there's safe routes that people might be more comfortable walking and biking instead of sitting in car lines. But I haven't heard anything about that project in a while, so I'm just wondering, with all the upheaval in the last couple of years, if we could get any status updates.
I really appreciate you flagging that, Kristen. That was on my list, but then I was like, I'm not sure if that's part of the environmental commission. So I kind of took it off, but that absolutely is something I've been trying very hard to figure out who is the best contact within the city to follow up. I had gotten a name from Dan Mewis and never heard back. So I'm waiting till the time is right. But if anyone in this group has thoughts or ideas, that's something that certainly across Blue Zones Project Monterey County, we've done a lot of work supporting safe routes to school in Salinas and in some of our other counties. So I would love to talk more about that. And if there's a better point of contact within the city, I'm all ears.
No, we were working on that, and but last I heard about it was a trial period when they did some work, kind of setting up some barriers and other features.
Yeah,
that'd be something maybe staff can help us with.
Yeah, I do know. I actually had a meeting with Superintendent Diffenbaugh a while back and was asking him kind of about the safe routes to school status. And he mentioned that, yeah, there were a couple of pop-up demonstration projects that had happened. I believe it's back on some, there is a time frame, I think, with TAMC to support some of the work. And that's something that I can also follow up with in terms of when they're starting to think about the implementation phase. But yes, Lacey, I see you came off of mute.
It's like the pre-hand raising sign. Yeah, Safe Routes to School, I think, presents a lot of opportunity. I know the city was working with Ecology Action out of Santa Cruz and Kristen Liskey, I believe, in particular. And I was actually on a call with her, and we were private chatting in the chat box just about Seaside and Safe Routes to School, and that, you know, she wants to keep working on that. I also reached out to council members when they were doing all of the work along Broadway or Obama Way, because they were doing a lot of improvements, but I didn't see the improvements that were included in the pilot demonstration up by MLK being implemented. And they said because they were different pots of money, like they had to do this one project and then they got another pot of money to implement the Safe Routes to Schools project, but just because of bureaucracy, I'm assuming they couldn't do them at the same time, which was unfortunate. So I don't know, maybe Beth knows more about that, maybe not. But I would add that, you know, even beyond MLK, there's a school that I walk to that's just overgrown with ice plant and litter and weeds. Like the sidewalks are this big because this much of it is overtaken with a slope till, you know, draining down onto it. And so there might be some smaller, just quick fixes, so to speak, that could be done to help some of the other schools in addition to the projects that we're working on MLK and maybe at the high school too. I'm not sure what the scope was, but.
I'll reach out to engineering, who I think is going to be doing the second phase of improvements on what they're calling Upper Broadway. So essentially from Fremont to Jim Moore, they received funding for that. But I think, Lacey, what you were referring to were pretty much the sidewalk ADA improvements at all the curbs. So yeah, more improvements are to follow, but I'll get in touch with Nisha or Scott in Public Works and follow up with you, Tanya.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Beth. Laura.
Hi, Tanya. Thank you so much for your presentation. I feel as though there's so many areas of intersection between the Blue Zone's, you know, imperatives and initiatives with what the Environmental Commission work is, right? Everything essentially that we do, all of our efforts are directed at community well-being. So I always get a little discombobulated, like where to start and where to end, and the sky's the limit. Essentially, you already know, you attended the Pollinator tour. You mentioned FOSSA, and they graciously host the Saturday workdays in our parks, which is a broad coalition, and that includes the Environmental Commission. As far as the component of that that is related to establishing pollinator habitat and improving our natural landscapes within public spaces, that's a very easy connection for volunteerism, you know, connection with the outdoors, connection with purpose, connection with community, all of the things that Blue Zones is about. So those ongoing Saturday work days are really perfect intersection as far as Environmental Commission ongoing projects. And then around policy, which is not my greatest forte, but with the rest of our agenda, including this visioning around Seaside East and development, ongoing long-term plans for development in Seaside, I think that Blue Zones could do a lot of positive work in contributing to long-term visioning and how those types of activities and policy will impact our community over the very long term. On tobacco policy, one of the initiatives for the Environmental Commission, of course, is oriented around litter and litter abatements. And we do park work days, we're always picking up litter, and one of the substantial components of that is often cigarette filters. that are discarded in parks and public spaces, and we find them on beaches and everywhere. And so incorporating that somehow would be really nice to see. And then on all of the things around food access, you also know that I work in agriculture in my day job, and the conversations and discussions around farmers markets and possibility of increasing food access and improving healthy choices in our community is something that I could talk with you probably for hours about. Got all ideas and excitement and enthusiasm, but that's probably for another time. But happy to continue those conversations. There was one other thing, and I'm looking for it in my notes here. Give me just one moment. Oh, basically that having seen you at the charrette and participated in various community outreach initiatives around different developments, I know that Blue Zones has made an effort to provide outreach in Spanish, and we of course have a majority community here in Seaside of Hispanic or Latine or Spanish speaking, in many cases only, community members. And I think that that's a very important thing for all of us in all of our work, to be continuing to try to outreach, extend, and communicate with that portion of the community, and really, really comprehensively integrate our community between, especially across those maybe language barriers or cultural differences. So I definitely want to just add that and encourage that as well in your ongoing work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate that last bit. And I will take you up on talking for a long time about food and food policy and food access. So.
Timothy or Mariana, do you have any comments or questions for Tanya?
I don't have any questions. I think Laura really summed up everything that we're working on and how you can be a really integral part of that, because there is a lot of intersections. But I do just want to thank you so much for coming and presenting on Blue Zones. I think that's really amazing. I've never heard of it, and I think the work you're doing is amazing and definitely, like we said, aligns with a lot of the work that we're currently doing. So thank you so much.
I have a couple questions, I guess, just to kind of add to Laura's last point that she made there when it comes to, intentional outreach in different languages, but also culturally relevant, and representation matters, right? And so you mentioned that you've been working in Salinas and they're starting to work here in Seaside. And I guess my question is, how are you making sure that there's representation in the work that you're doing within volunteers and within your own staff, and making sure that you're also uplifting community leaders within those communities? Yeah,
Thank you. That's so vitally important for the long-term impact of these sorts of programs. And it's something that we think and talk about quite a bit, and we're really seeing as we're continuing to hire staff and backfill staff. I'd say 75%, if not more than that, of our staff is bilingual, now bilingual Spanish speaking. And we have an internal commitment that any of the materials that we're putting out are offered in both English and Spanish. Certainly in terms of working to identify community leaders on the ground, that's part of this kind of the slow and steady work that myself and my team in particular are committed to. And a lot of that has to do with showing up and listening and trying to meet folks and build relationships and see where there's possibility. I think a lot of it has to do with not coming in as outsiders, but just seeing and hearing where are the challenges, and then, where are there opportunities that we can provide additional resource to support those challenges that are existing. So I know that's not the most direct answer, but it is something that we are working on, and sometimes we get it right and sometimes we don't. And we just want to continue to kind of keep listening and keep trying to build trust and find opportunity. You know, in some of our other colleagues that are working in Salinas and into the Salinas Valley, there's work around starting to align with some of the different promotoras that are working in community and through the VITA project. And so that's something else that we're exploring. But yeah, trying to kind of debunk the like outside expert idea and really trying to center the folks who are living in the community and are truly the experts of their own communities is how I want to approach the work. But I mean, I need help, and it takes time to understand who those folks are. And so I guess that's how I try to approach it, is to be humble and to listen and to take the time that's necessary to find the right folks to be talking to. So what can be built is truly of service.
Did you have another question, Mariana? I can't remember if you said you had plural or just a question. You're good? Thank you. I just had a couple of thoughts that I would share, and one is around the litter, which we talked about, and maybe incorporating some aspects of litter collection into park workdays as sort of like an added element that we can invite people to do and participate in. And I'd like to hear what other commission members might think about that idea, especially those who've been showing up and engaged in the work days. And then the other two thoughts that I have are just around, they're a little bit more big ideas, and so I'm going to just throw them out there, realizing that to make them happen would require quite a bit of work. But we've often had conversations about the alleyways in Seaside as sort of unused, more or less wasted space. Some of them are used to literally dump materials. Some of them are used for any variety of extracurricular activities. Some of them are just places to park cars. I've seen all of those things happen in my back alleyway, and I've also played with my kids in the back alleyway. And I wish we could find a way to transition from those first described activities into more of like reclaiming that space for our communities, especially in areas where there are multifamily units that don't have parks nearby. Like, they're really limited in the amount of space that they have to send their kids out to play. And I don't want to send my kids to the back alleyway alone. So I'm guessing most other parents don't want to do that either. So I have just this vision of like an interconnected pathway of alleyways with murals and people, you know, instead of having fences all along the alleyway, it might be a little cutout door and planting flowers and a playground and a pathway, and, you know, all of these things that provide space to the people that live on that block, but then also provide a more inviting connection to our larger natural open space areas. And so we're going to talk about Seaside East later in the agenda, but one of the challenges with that space is that it's very cut off from the rest of the community. So you have this big like 4-lane highway basically between Fort Ord and the existing development of Seaside. And so I just picture these interconnected alleyways that link people to either Fort Ord or down to Roberts Lake or Laguna, Grande Park area and the beach in a more inviting way than, you know, the infrastructure heavy streets, where there's lots of cars parked and things like that. So that's one kind of really long-term vision that we need a lot of funding and time and initiative to have happen. But I'm going to keep saying it because I think eventually we could get there. Kristen, did you have a comment on that before I have my?
Yeah, it's a nice vision, and I think there's something we can think about there. I think we're also going to want to hold the equity of the different alleys, because while one alley might be easily transformed into a park for people to just enjoy with pretty paths and flowers, the alley closest to me is the primary access for a number of dwellings, and there's a lot of traffic on it, and it's effectively a road. It just happens to be an alley, and it's hard to think of the neighborhoods that are multi-unit dwellings whose opening is an alley, who don't even get normal like street parking, and aren't close to a park, and also don't get, you know, nice flower lined pathways because they have to use it for their cars. So I'm trying to think of the areas that need it the most might be the ones that are the hardest to do this for. So we'll just want to keep thinking about it.
And my last comment or thought was around like snack trucks, or like this sort of candy dispensing carts that often come around schools at the end of schools, and trying to sort of swap those out with some healthier yet still inviting food for children. I'm sure that's something that's come up in your world before. I think we've talked about it in the past on this commission. But that's something that I notice in my neighborhood a lot. But there's so many opportunities and ideas that I think we could explore. And I would like to just maybe identify one that we can focus in on. And for me, the easiest, I'm focusing in just on the easiest. And that's integrating litter collection into the park work days, because those park days are scheduled. We'd have a meeting location. We'd have city facilities be able to come and pick up whatever is gathered, since they're already picking up the work supplies. And so it would just be a matter of outreach and communication that is part of it. So I don't know, Laura, in particular, how you would feel about that. I don't want to take the thunder of the work days either.
No, absolutely. There are so many opportunities to do more and more with the Saturday work days as they are. It's really a matter of organizing ourselves, I guess, essentially having a champion that would lead that effort consistently and be present regularly every Saturday, and or a coalition of people that take that as their projects.
Mm-hmm.
Person, it's too much to basically try to suggest and allocate people to all of the different tasks, especially as new volunteers come in all the time. So essentially having someone that's really focused on the litter, and we have that opportunity to clean up, you know, the streets and neighborhoods all around those parks. It's all connected to residential areas and school areas, which could definitely use that kind of effort on an ongoing basis. So I love the suggestion.
Okay.
One of the things that we're wanting to do is develop like a much more kind of regular and consistent community cleanup schedule. Like, you know, we had been doing several beach cleanups, and then there were a couple of events that we collaborated with Mayor Delgado, you know, and Citizens for Sustainable Marina. And I think from our side, you know, from like a kind of a getting the word out cadence side for the folks that are connected with Blue Zones Project, you know, I've been thinking that it might be great to be like the second Saturday of every month or something like that, you know, that we're, you know, marketing and getting people to plan for and engage with. And so we're in the process of trying to develop that schedule, like looking at 2022, which is so weird that we're talking about 2022, but we are. But I wonder, yeah, I don't know, we could certainly just start trying to kind of market every Saturday a month, or maybe picking one Saturday a month that we really try to push and convene a good number of community volunteers to come to, and just kind of see how that rolls out. I don't know how that lands for you all. I mean, there was one in particular that I can point to that I think was extraordinary, because the Monterey County Weekly ended up picking it up, but we had 100 volunteers show up at one of our cleanups, which is a lot of bodies to keep busy. But we were at the beach and we were able to put people across over onto El Estero Park. And I mean, a lot of debris was pulled out that day, which was amazing. But I think on average, we have like 20 to 30 people show up for the cleanups that we can kind of get behind. So I don't know. Yeah. Does one, kind of piloting it with one Saturday a month sound like maybe a good start, or what do you think?
I'm going to jump in, although I see Kristen has her hand raised. I don't know if it's related to this topic. I would say that that's entirely feasible. If we have advanced planning, we have some sites where we have pollinator gardens that are larger parks that could accommodate a larger workforce, essentially a larger volunteer body than others. There are definitely some of the parks that are not appropriate for like double the amount of volunteers that we normally get, which is 20 to 30 on any given Saturday already.
Mm-hmm.
So that would just require coordination and scheduling in advance to make sure that we're going to be located at one of those sites. So it's a little bit of communication, but certainly possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Kristen, go ahead.
I was thinking about if maybe the work sites that we have and the added goal of cleaning up the neighborhoods around it. I mean, the great news is that because these are, like you said, in residential neighborhoods, that if you have too many people, you can start sending them off down different roads and cleaning up those roads. And that might be a way to do it if we're bringing in trash pickup instead of only the gardens. But I saw your schedule of your Moai, which are probably pleasant walks. Maybe the people don't want to pick up trash, but maybe we do give them trash in buckets. And even like your purpose workshops, if you identify people who are talking about like, oh, I want to get out more, or I wish I could garden, but I don't have the space, or I want to give back, or I want to do something environmental, then maybe you could use some of those to specifically identify, hey, your purpose sounds like it would be in line with these work events that are happening over here, whether it's, trash cleanup down the residential neighborhood, or specifically like tending to some pollinator plants or community gardens. Then that may be a way to have events that you're already doing, that you're in the habit of setting up, and then having our needs connect. So now we've got more people helping.
Totally. I mean, you're hitting the nail. After those purpose workshops, people are like raring to go to give and get involved in community. So having the opportunity to point them towards, amazing existing programs that are looking for additional inspired folks. Absolutely. So I think, done, check. That's very easy, to point them in that direction. Maybe we can find another, I know you have other items on your agenda, but we can talk and hash out maybe a few more of these details about the cleanups, because I also think like if we want to build on to those Saturday work days and have there be a litter pickup, there would be one of our staff or volunteers would probably be able to come, and we have pickers and we have trash buckets, and like all of this kind of stuff that we can contribute, and they could help facilitate, that aspect. We would just obviously need some sort of direction in terms of like, oh, down that street is really a good, a street that is needing energy and support, that sort of thing. But
why don't I email you
Yeah.
the list of all the upcoming work days? I think we have them scheduled through basically the end of the next year, maybe, or somewhere around that. Maybe, Laura.
First week of April.
Okay, through April. And we can go from there on selecting dates and something that works with your staff that is a good park to do that on, where we can send people out, and then go from there in terms of advertising and getting folks engaged.
Awesome.
Okay. All right. I'll follow up then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Let's move on. The next item on the agenda is a discussion of the final presentation on the Seaside East. So some of you maybe went to some of the charrettes that were held during October, but I think Beth has a presentation for us, and then we will discuss.
Oh, I put you first, actually. That's all right. We'll just go backwards.
Yeah, okay.
So I provided a lot of attachments, so hopefully you had a chance to go through some of them. The staff report that I generated from this was actually taken from the February 6th, 2020 meeting, which was written by Craig Malin. And that was for the dedication of the contract or the money to hire DPZ. As they had on their final slide, experts in traditional and sustainable town building, really a world-renowned urban planning firm. You can see all the articles that they kind of highlighted down at the bottom. Ages ago, they did the design for Seaside, Florida, which was pretty much the first build out of this new urbanism method of designing a neighborhood. Very rare that you would see a standard single family lot like we see in Seaside, being that, you know, although there are smaller lots, you know, the 5,000 square foot front yard, backyard, white picket fence archetype that has long passed and is maybe not as relevant for creating the healthy communities that we want to see, where there's a combination of uses where walking is natural and jumping in your car is not necessary. I will go a little bit back and take some excerpts from the staff report that Craig wrote, just as context as to why they went with DPZ. So at this time when this was written, City of Seaside would be taking over 625 acres of the former Fort Ord and would be responsible, unless a JPA was formed, for habitat management of the property and public safety expenses. And those expenses could be hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And if they're not paid through new revenue generated from whatever may happen in Seaside East, then taxpayers are going to have to bear the cost of maintaining that property. So that gets us into that question of do something or do nothing, right? So in 2006, the city zoned the property RS8. That was our last zoning code update. That is the current version of our zoning code, besides the ordinance amendments that have happened and scattered throughout that time frame from 2006 to now. In his staff report, he stated that zoning is inconsistent with the current state of best practices for planning and expected to be updated to include more affordable housing options following our general plan update, which the consultant is needing to update a handful of elements in because it was done in 2016 and some laws have come into effect that have changed some of those requirements. So this vision was listed out. It is the city's vision. This is also one of those larger excerpts from the staff report, which I will actually read the italicized portion because I think it's written well and simply stated. So the vision should inclusively and thoughtfully secure the current and future social and physical needs of the community with leading edge environmental enhancement practices. The general plan update currently in progress affirms the city has no interest in environmentally destructive sprawl. Rather, the city has an interest in convening open community dialogue on achieving the community's vision on Seaside East, with open processes distinctly different from those outside our community who operate at secret private meetings. Protecting environmentally sensitive land, creating opportunities for Seasiders to experience the natural environments in their daily lives, leading the peninsula on tree protection, clean energy, affordable housing, and social justice are all ripe for discussion. discussing the challenges and opportunities of incorporating active recreational and cultural uses into the vision is expected. Conceptualizing and testing the financial outcomes of a range of potential land uses is necessary. In sum, the city requires expert facilitation of a truly inclusive visioning process. And that's how we landed with DPZ. And Craig, you could say, was obsessed with the design, architecture, and planning. And choosing DPZ was no accident. And we were to have you doing this with us.
Hey, Beth, you keep cutting out a little bit.
Do I? Shame on me. I don't know why that is.
I don't know. If it gets bad, I'll
Sure. This is the schedule, just in case you did or didn't participate, and how much or little you know of this. Just to give you an idea, they were here from the 22nd through the 29th. The blue items are specific community groups that they met with on specific topics. Other times the design studio was open or closed, and then there were a series of public events, which you can see in the pink. So the final pinup was on 10/29. The attachment that I provided, I noted those pages. So if you want a point of reference as to what's covered, I'm not even going to go into all of these. You need to plug through that document and kind of review all the details that they provided, especially in the existing site conditions assessment. There's a lot to learn there, as you can see, with everything listed, from everything from the regional housing needs assessment to down to the details of trails throughout Fort Ord. Going on to the public engagement, this was the process that they engaged with the community. And then the charrette plans, which they came up with 4 options from lowest development to highest density possible. And then moving forward, so the next steps for the city and the Environmental Commission as well. One thing that they wanted to point out was kind of the conventional process in moving forward and implementing a plan like what was envisioned at the charrette versus the city vision process, and then what we're landing on and what may be the city's most likely way of potentially moving forward with pursuing Seaside East as a city developer process. So the conventional process, you might receive an unsolicited proposal for something. You can think about any project that has happened in the recent past in Seaside likely came through that method. Somebody owns land, they want to do something with that land, or they have a proposal on city land that they think would be beneficial for the city. Very little input. Maybe they need to meet certain city codes, and they do. They get their entitlements and they move on. The city vision process, also a little bit of a step up from that in terms of giving the community and the city more ability to influence that, versus then the city developer process, where the city establishes the vision, implements the vision. Parks and street are public, and more than 20% affordable units are built on site and prioritized. So when we think about this, Seaside East, if when it happens, is a long range plan. Just like our general plan covers 20 years, it would be likely that this would happen over a period of years, being phased as the city is able to build it out. And then this was a slide also available on it from the consultant. So hoping to, if we do move forward, a community survey for the preferred plan of those 4, presentation to the city council regarding the general plan updates. They would need to develop a specific plan, just as they did with West Broadway Urban Village and with Campus Town, to outline, design requirements, architectural elements they want to see incorporated, essentially your zoning code for that piece of property. Moving on towards CEQA, EIR, whether or not the council gets around to approving the CEQA, a specific plan, incorporating that into the general plan, and then putting a development plan together, issuing an RFP to try to get different developers in to help phase that project out. So looking back to that statement that I read regarding some of the environmental goals and considerations that we need to take into place, and the environmental committee's role in doing so, I at this point would hand it over to Lacey to talk about how we can, as the group, incorporate those elements, make sure that certain design features are incorporated by looking at standards that are already set, specifically with the Living Building Challenge and potentially any LEED associated qualifications or certificates.
Thanks for that background, Beth. I was able to attend the first community meeting. I went to one of the meetings, part of the meetings on housing. And then I stopped in during the open hours and talked to them about just a couple of thoughts that I had after the first community meeting. This is sort of a rare and amazing opportunity, I think. Some people would call it an opportunity. Some people would call it a tragedy to develop on the space that is Fort Ord. I'm not going to get too much into the politics or details that came up at the first community meeting. But I would like to present something to all of you to consider, because I think the Environmental Commission has an opportunity here to step up as a leader in ensuring that if development happens in that area, and all indications point that it will in some way, shape, or form, how can we do so in a manner that's socially just and environmental, like, I was going to say environmentally aggressive, but environmentally like unaggressive. And one of the ways that I think is really valuable to do this, especially when we know that this process could take years, if not dozens of years, is to put a framework, or to require a framework be included. And I'm drawing upon my experience at CSUMB when we did our master plan update and looked at sustainability frameworks. And there's three that I'm familiar with through that process. One is LEED for neighborhood development, which basically looks at what LEED does for a building, but at more of a community scale. There's something called eco villages, which is pretty remarkable in the way they function, but those are usually much smaller and almost off the grid in terms of, like, sometimes they even have their own currency and very closed loop in the systems that the community creates. But the one that I wanted to sort of highlight for you today is called the Living Community Challenge, and they also have something associated called the Living Building Challenge. So I'm going to share my screen and just go through it fairly quickly. I don't think we have time to really delve into this, but I can answer some questions if people have them. The premise here, if you think about LEED is kind of like doing less bad, right? You want to try to be as efficient as possible. You want to try to do all of these things. Whereas Living Community Challenge is looking at what we can do to give back to the environment. So it's not just looking at a footprint and the impact that we have, but the handprint and what we can give back. And there are different petals, like the petals of a flower, that are incorporated in the Living Community Challenge. And these are those petals: place, water, energy, health and happiness, materials, equity, and beauty. And within each of these, there's some imperatives that you would have to meet. But it's pretty, it's net positive water, it's net positive energy. It's not just being carbon neutral. So it is much more forward thinking, I would argue, than something like LEED for neighborhood development, but isn't quite as far as eco villages. And I'll just scroll. Is there one that people are more curious about? I just wanted to share one. So if there's one you're curious about, just shout it out and we'll look at that one.
I mean, the more challenging one I think is more interesting versus the doing less bad.
So that would be materials. I think materials is the hardest petal out of all of these. So we can look at materials. And I can share this with you all after the meeting. This is just talking about the visioning, planning process. Sorry, I'm skipping down. Water. Sorry, my kids can you hear my kids yelling at each other? Sorry. Okay, so this is the materials petal. It looks at things like the red list, responsible industry, and living economy sourcing. So this would all be considerations during the building process. It includes accounting for the embodied carbon of the construction and the infrastructure. And then it also looks at how waste and materials are collected once the community, in this case, is sort of up and functioning. So the way that this usually works is that there's a living community challenge like visioning process, which we could draw on a lot of the work that was just done with DPZ. And then the next page or the next section sort of goes into how then you would do it. So you sort of develop a plan, and they do offer resources and guidance and support for doing it. But I think that it's really important for us to consider something like this. And what I would propose, just in the interest of time, is that I'd be happy to just draft a letter for this committee to review that would basically propose a framework like this be used and incorporated into the specific plan for this area of development, and make sure that that would be also thereby included in the general plan update. So that when it's 20 years from now and we're starting to think about this, that we can still turn back to the really sort of bold vision that that the community has been talking about for this area. Thoughts or questions? Go ahead, Laura.
That sounds great. Thank you, Lacey, for taking that initiative. I will look forward to receiving that letter to review.
Okay. Timothy?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's amazing. And, you know, with this whole development, I think trying to set that precedent and setting us as a leader for that would definitely be important. And I would probably lean more towards that living learning challenge, like you said, not so as stringent as the eco town you were saying.
Yeah.
I look definitely forward to drafting some letter. I think that's definitely needed. And yeah, I guess I was going to ask a question of like, yeah, what exactly would that process look like? But I think we can address that later and just start with the letter for now.
Yeah. I think, you know, it would require initially a lot of education around what it is and making the community aware of what it is and the benefits that it can provide. It would probably scare a developer because it is so ambitious. Luckily, we're in California, and some of these things are continuing to like not be as crazy out there as they used to be either 10 years ago, or if we were in a less sort of progressive area. I think Living Community Challenge also does a much better job than Lead for Neighborhood Development of addressing the people aspects of development and the equity and inclusion pieces, which is one thing that really drew me to it. So what I'll probably try to draft that before our next meeting. So I'll have Beth send it out for people to comment and then respond on, because I think we should get it to council before they have their presentation by DPZ. So I'll work with Beth on that. Sound good? All right. Let's move on then Oh, any public comments? Sorry, I always forget. So bad. Are there any public comments on this item? Okay. Not seeing any, so we will continue with
We
the
do
last.
have
Oh,
Tanya.
sorry.
Tanya's raising her hand.
Oh, great. Yes, go ahead, Tanya.
Hello.
Oh.
I just wanted to say that I attended pretty much every single one of the charrette opportunities, and I was really impressed by the leadership and the vision of the city to bringing in a group like DPZ, and I was most excited by all of the sticky notes, you know, on that one day that the community was sticking on the walls, and it was just really encouraging to see what was being shared and the vision that was brought forth. Certainly got me excited, and was happy to be a part, both, you know, as an individual resident and part of Blue Zones project, about what is possible, and very much echo the sentiment that, you know, it likely will be developed. So putting some parameters around that in terms of what really we want to see, I think is so important. So kudos to the city. I think the work you all are doing in terms of continuing to kind of push that leading edge with this template that you're talking about is important. And yeah, who knows where design and development will be in, you know, 10, 15 years. But I think just continuing to hold really high standards is very, very important. So that's what I have to say. And I'm going to duck out from the rest of the evening, but it has been a pleasure being with you all virtually. And I look forward to continuing the conversation. I don't know if I can, I don't think there's a chat here. I can't enter my email address, but please get in touch with me. I'm happy to meet for coffee or just chat about anything, and continuing all of these schemes, scheming and planning and strategizing together. So thank you.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for your presentation and for your words of encouragement. We appreciate you. All right, we'll move on to the next agenda item under business items, which is the climate action plan. Beth, do you want to go through your slides first, and then we can go from there?
I don't really have much on the slide besides what was on the agenda, with the additional question being asked of coming up with questions for council on what they expect from the EC and our role in this, besides what has been simply stated as providing input and suggestions as to what's included in the RFP. Lacey and I talked a little bit earlier about the lack of direction, whether this is going to be climate action plan versus a sustainability plan. Also, if we want to start having guest speakers that we select, like AMBAG, who provides us with a greenhouse gas emissions report to council, to start to slowly start introducing this idea before the city goes out with an RFP, just to get a better idea that it's just not this one-time funding of 120,000 that was approved in the budget, but it's ongoing funding every year thereafter to implement policies if we do go in the direction of the cap. So that's pretty much all I have to say. Lacey, I'll let you guide the conversation with the committee.
Okay, thanks, Beth. The trick that I think we're in is that the council is looking for direction from us, and we're looking for direction from council. And they, in particular, you know, sort of are looking for, I think, like the scope and the vision that we would want to have for the climate action plan slash sustainability plan. But there are a lot of legal issues that sometimes come up, especially with climate action plans, and if that is being used as a mitigation approach for greenhouse gas emissions in the general plan. And so I don't quite feel comfortable, providing recommendations on that. I'm just not, that's not my area of expertise, the legality of those things. I know enough to not get in trouble, right? Like I know enough to know that we should think about it and not jump in too quickly, and that there are a lot of things to consider. So I would really like to just get a primary staff contact, which was Amanda, and she left the city in October. And I don't know that anybody has been identified. So that's the first question that I would ask. And the second question would be, do we want this to be a sustainability plan, which means that elements beyond greenhouse gas emissions, like habitat and what kinds of plants can be grown in different areas, or trees can be planted along roadsides. It might also include things around water use, or waste. Waste is sometimes included in greenhouse gas emissions, though, as well. So that's the other sort of aspect. And I guess I'm curious what other questions this committee has, and if you have a preference on a broader sustainability plan versus a climate action plan. Yeah, Laura.
So I think as far as the climate action plan component, kind of what I feel that I've heard from other municipalities, and having interacted with and observed the efforts made by Monterey County towards a climate action plan, it seems as though somehow liaising better, coordinating better as a city, Seaside could benefit from the regional approach to the climate action plan, but we could certainly benefit from a very Seaside focused sustainability plan. So I think that I lean towards that approach. And having a primary staff contact at the city that is engaged with that process in either way is going to be really, really essential. And if a consultant or firm were hired to facilitate the process, it might not be so much drafting a climate action plan, maybe drafting a sustainability plan, but incorporating the type of collaboration and coalition building on a regional climate action plan, incorporating Seaside's interests and needs to a regional plan, would also be a component of that. Those are my thoughts.
Timothy?
Yeah, I think my thoughts kind of align with Laura's. I think there's definitely a need for both of them, right? Like, if we can do the climate action plan, great. If we have the resources and the accessibility to go even further with the sustainability plan, I would definitely lean that way, because there is the need to address these more, more of these topics in Seaside, as we've talked about a lot. We work with habitat, we work with the litter and all these other problems. So there is that need. But if there's already this trouble with trying to find that primary staff contact and someone to really facilitate it, I do want to be cautionary and wary of then now expanding the climate action plan to something if there's already a lack of resources to complete the climate action plan. So I think that question would have to come after we maybe provide suggestions for a consulting firm and identify that primary staff contact and the resources that would go into the climate action plan. That would be that's definitely where I'm aligned. It's just trying to answer those questions before. But if we can, I would definitely support the sustainability plan over climate action.
Okay. Yeah, Laura.
I just wanted to return to what you were saying in terms of this isn't a one-off activity. You don't just spend a bunch of money right now and bam, it's done. We have the thing. It's about maintenance, right? Just like the pollinator gardens. It's ongoing, it's consistent effort. And so questions to council in terms of making these decisions, guiding this work, really do revolve and orient around what is that plan? What is the investment that and strategic orientation of the council and the city in the long term towards either approach.
Mm-hmm. I'm just writing these notes down. Mariana or Kristen, do you have any comments or thoughts? You good? I know Beth sent out Watsonville's plan, so that might be a really good one to review. It's timely, and I think there's some parallels that can be drawn between the communities. I think, you know, the next step, if I have the support of the group, is that I would follow up. So I've sent an email in the past to the mayor and all the council members just asking who the staff point of contact would be and how we can get started. And that was when I was told it was Amanda, but she left. And so maybe I can just follow back up and say, where are we now? Who should I go to now? I think they're going to be having some staff changes and hiring some new positions. So really making sure that this is on somebody's position description and plan, that they know that that is going to be a part of their workload, would be really important. And until we really start peeling the onion, I think we're just going to keep spinning our wheels on this one. The only other benefit or the only other action that we could take that might be beneficial is asking Ashley Paulsworth back from the county, because they've sort of started to develop their county climate action plan. And that was where we had originally sort of envisioned some collaboration. So just a refresher on where they are with their process and how we can maybe benefit from some of that work, not reinvent the wheel. Maybe we can ask if Ashley can come back in December. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Okay. Any public comment on this item before we move to commissioner reports?
Members of the public on Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature if you have a public comment on this item. Chair, no members of the public have indicated they wish to make public comment.
Okay, thanks. We'll move on to reports from commissioners then. I'll just go around the screen as they appear as the tiles appear on my screen. Laura, do you have any reports?
Just again, as I've already referred to, but ongoing pollinator habitat work. So continued success with the FOSPA sponsored park days. We have started planting, thank goodness for the rain. We are now expanding our pollinator gardens in 9 seaside parks, and that's totally exhilarating. The Environmental Commission's or Cities Be City web page now has the updated calendar for which park we will be at on which date. And the activities highlighted there are pretty much planting through the rest of the winter. So that's all very exciting. I am giving a presentation tomorrow to the Seaside Rotary. The county, like a county coalition of Rotary clubs, has a pollinator initiative, and they will be planting habitat at Laguna Seca on November 20th. We unfortunately already have a planting day, so I won't be able to attend that, but we're sending someone from my employer, the Resource Conservation District. And we've been kind of interacting back and forth about their interest in the seaside gardens as kind of a model for building interest around the county, and also right here at home around pollinator gardens and habitat. So I'll be presenting tomorrow to the Seaside Rotary about that. I think that's all I have to report. Thanks.
Thanks, Laura. Congratulations. That's great. Sign of the success. All right, Timothy, you are next on my screen. So do you have any reports?
Yeah, just a quick report. I just wanted to quickly clarify and also apologize for the lack of my attendance for the last couple of months. I had a academic conflict, and that was the reason why I couldn't attend for the last couple of meetings. But I've consulted with my professor, and I will be able to attend the next meeting, and then the next semester will start, and I don't have a time conflict next semester. So just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thanks, Timothy. We're happy to have you. Mariana, any reports? Okay. Kristen?
No reports. I had to email my comments about the climate action plan to Beth because unfortunately I was on mute at the time. So I sent those via text to you and Beth. But no additional reports. Great news to hear about the pollination, and maybe with new purpose-filled partners, we can have lots of people there to help work on them.
Yeah, that sounds great. Great. I feel like there was something I had noted down, and honestly, my brain is fried. So I can't remember if there was something that I was going to report on. What that is. Beth, do you remember? Did I mention anything to you today in our call?
Yeah, I have no idea.
You can't just get inside my head, huh? Scary in there. Scary in there.
Only when we're at the park.
Right. Okay. I did send out more requests for members. We're 2 members short, and I really would love to fill those 2 spots. And I had 2 responses. One from was a student, and she didn't live in Seaside, so I don't think that's going to work out. And the other had a couple of questions, and we've tried to give them some information. So I'm hoping something will come to fruition, and we'll have some new members to enjoy this work with. I sent it out to the NAACP. Really appreciate their secretary blasting it out to all of their members. Because I really want to ensure that as we welcome new members, everybody is welcome, but we would love to have this commission be more reflective of the diversity of our community. So thank you all for your continued work. And if we get new folks, hopefully it'll be soon or in the new year. Beth, do you have any reports before we adjourn?
I do not.
Awesome. Okay. With that, our next meeting is December 14th, and we will continue on Zoom for that meeting. And until then, I wish you all happy Thanksgiving. Have a wonderful start to your holiday season. And thank you so much for the work that you do. Pay attention to your inboxes, because you'll probably be receiving some messages with input needed from